Rooftop Ramen and Rumors. The perpetual hum of Neo-Tokyo was a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the very ferro-concrete foundations of the towering city. It was a complex symphony woven from the silent glide of automated delivery drones, their optical sensors sweeping the rain-slicked airspace, the distant, rhythmic clang of the subterranean mag trains, tunneling deep beneath the earth, and the soft, almost imperceptible rustle of millions of synthetic garments as the city's inhabitants moved through their structured lives. Neo-Tokyo was a city of dizzying verticality, where ancient, repurposed temples nestled incongruously beside impossibly sleek, chrome-plated skyscrapers that pierced the perpetually gray, cloud-filtered sky. Corporate logos, vibrant and aggressive, glowed from every conceivable surface, painting the perpetual twilight in an endless, shifting kaleidoscope of neon blues, aggressive reds, and corporate greens. The air, perpetually cool and often damp with the fine mist of advanced atmospheric filtration systems, carried a faint, metallic scent, a byproduct of the city's endless machinery, mixed with the sweet, cloying aroma of synthetic blossoms cultivated in vertical farms and the sharp, manufactured perfumes of the city's bustling districts. This vibrant, yet unsettling, stage was home to countless stories, most of them unnoticed by the relentless march of progress. Kenji, however, had found his own small pocket of relative calm within this urban chaos. He was a jaded street food vendor, a purveyor of warmth and momentary solace in the form of steaming bowls of ramen. His domain was a precarious, but strangely serene, rooftop nestled between two mid-level corporate residential towers in the Shibuya Ascendancy district. From this vantage point, far above the grinding traffic and the relentless pedestrian flow, the hum of Neo-Tokyo felt less like an assault and more like a distant, omnipresent whisper. His ramen stall was a marvel of compact efficiency, a testament to Kenji's ingenuity and his deep-seated desire for simplicity. Constructed from salvaged and repurposed synth alloys, it was a gleaming silver cart that unfolded with a series of precise clicks and whirs. It housed an automated noodle maker, its internal gears a quiet symphony, a perfectly calibrated broth simmering unit, maintained at an exact temperature by a small, integrated fusion cell, and a series of holographic menu displays that flickered invitingly. Steam, thick and aromatic, perpetually plumed from the broth unit, carrying the savory scent of rich pork, miso, and garlic. It was a beacon against the chill, a promise of comfort. Kenji himself was a figure of quiet purpose. He moved with the unhurried efficiency of someone who had long mastered his craft. His hands, though calloused from years of handling hot bowls and raw ingredients, possessed a surprising delicacy. He wore a simple, dark, utilitarian jumpsuit, impervious to spills and easy to clean, it seemed subtly glowing with low-level bioluminescence, a common feature for those who worked in dim, high-traffic environments. His augments were few, but highly specialized. Tiny neural processors embedded behind his ears allowed him to precisely monitor and adjust the broth's chemical composition with a thought, ensuring perfect flavor balance, and subtly enhanced optical implants gave him superior low-light vision, crucial for navigating the often poorly lit rooftops. He preferred the quiet solitude of his rooftop, the vast, open sky, or at least, the vast, open smog, above him, to the suffocating press of the streets below. His interactions were limited. A brief nod, a polite exchange of credits, a satisfied slurp from a customer, then a quiet retreat back into the rhythmic hum of his operation. He felt a detached sense of contentment in this routine, a small, unchanging eddy in the city's turbulent flow. He wasn't looking for trouble, he was looking for peace. Tonight, the rain was a relentless drumming on the metal canopy of his stall, washing the neon reflections across the wet ferrocrete. The aroma of his simmering broth, however, seemed to cut through the dampness, promising warmth. His few late-night customers were mostly drones making deliveries to the high-rises, or tired corporate workers seeking a quick, authentic meal before retreating to their sterile habitation units. Each slurp of hot ramen was a small victory, a moment of genuine human, or synth-human, satisfaction in a manufactured world. As the hour grew late, nearing his usual closing time, a figure approached his stall. They were unlike his usual clientele. The person was cloaked in a dark, nondescript synth fabric cloak that seemed to absorb all light, making their form indistinct. Their face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, tilted low. Even their gait was unusual, a slow, almost deliberate shuffle that seemed too casual for the hurried pace of Neo-Tokyo. A faint, almost imperceptible scent, like ozone and burnt circuits, emanated from them, cutting through the savory ramen aroma. "One bowl, please," a voice rasped, low and gravelly, barely audible over the rain. It was distorted, subtly modulated, making it impossible to determine gender or age. "The tonkatsu. Extra rich." Kenji nodded, pouring the steaming broth into a bowl, adding his perfectly cooked noodles, succulent chashu, and a scattering of vibrant green onions. As he handed the bowl across the counter, the figure's hand emerged from the cloak. It was gloved, but Kenji noticed a subtle, irregular flicker of light from beneath the fabric, almost like exposed circuitry. As the figure paid with a credit chip, their thumb briefly brushed against Kenji's palm. In that fleeting contact, Kenji felt something small, flat, and cold slide into his hand, barely distinguishable from the credit chip itself. The scent of ozone intensified. The figure took the ramen, offered a curt nod, and then melted back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. Kenji looked down at his palm. Amidst the expected credit chip, there was a tiny, black encrypted data shard, no larger than his thumbnail, perfectly smooth and cool to the touch. He felt a prickle of unease. This was not a normal transaction. He slipped the shard into a hidden compartment on his cart, a space he reserved for emergency credits or rare, illicit ingredients. He tried to dismiss it, to focus on the rhythmic clang of his dishwashing drones. But the encounter, the cold feel of the shard, the strange scent, gnawed at him. He had always avoided anything that hinted at the city's deeper currents, content in his isolated, delicious corner of the world. Now, something had intruded. Later, as he was packing up, the rain still drumming a monotonous rhythm, Kenji heard the subtle, almost subconscious whispers of the city's information network. It wasn't the usual white noise of digital chatter. Tonight, there were rumors. Hushed mentions of a prominent missing scientist, Dr. Arisawa, a luminary in biotech and AI, known for his work in advanced neural interface technology. Whispers of corporate espionage, of data leaks, of Omnicorp, the city's dominant tech conglomerate, clamping down harder than usual. The confluence of these rumors with the mysterious shard made the hairs on the back of Kenji's neck prickle. He felt a growing sense of unease. He was a ramen vendor, not a data broker. But it seemed, whether he liked it or not, he was now involved. Kenji lived just a few levels below his rooftop stall, in a cramped, utilitarian hab unit, little more than a sleeping pod and a compact, fold-out synth kitchen. The walls were bare ferrocrete, the only personal touches a few faded printouts of ancient ramen recipes and a single, meticulously maintained hydroponic basil plant, its leaves a vibrant green against the sterile gray. The air here was recycled, tasting faintly of metal and dust. As soon as he was inside, the door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Kenji pulled out the data shard. He held it between his fingers, its cool surface a stark contrast to the lingering warmth from his ramen broth. He knew better than to plug it directly into his personal comm unit. Anonymous shards were often laced with viruses or tracking software. Instead, he pulled out an old, heavily modified data reader, a relic from his youth, isolated from all networks. He inserted the shard. The reader whirred to life, its ancient screen flickering green. For a moment, nothing. Then, a torrent of data began to scroll. It wasn't just text. There were fragmented audio logs, distorted and choppy, but discernible. There were encrypted video snippets, blurry and pixelated, but revealing glimpses of sterile laboratories and shadowed faces. There was raw biometric data, dense strings of genetic and neural information. It was a digital kaleidoscope of unsettling information, slowly coalescing into a disturbing picture. The audio log spoke in hushed tones of Project Chimera, of unethical neural linking, and of human augmentation without consent. The video snippets showed Dr. Arisawa, looking increasingly gaunt and distressed, arguing vehemently with a figure whose face was always obscured. The biometric data, terrifyingly, matched known Omnicorp employees, but also hinted at something more, something alien, or heavily modified beyond recognition. Kenji's neural processors, usually dedicated to tasting nuances in broth, now worked overtime, piecing together the fragments. Dr. Arisawa, the renowned scientist whose disappearance had been vaguely attributed to stress leave, was clearly not on vacation. He was involved in something deeply disturbing, something Omnicorp wanted hidden at all costs. The shards seemed to confirm the worst of the city's whispers. Omnicorp was not just a tech giant, it was a shadow government, manipulating lives at the most fundamental level. A chilling realization washed over Kenji. This data was not just proof of corruption, it was a ticking time bomb. The informant had given him something that could shatter Omnicorp's carefully constructed facade. And in doing so, they had put a target squarely on his back. He was just a ramen vendor. He wasn't equipped for this. He wanted to delete it, to pretend he'd never seen it, to go back to his simple life of noodles and broth. But the images, the voices, the raw data, were burned into his mind. He couldn't unsee it. The very next morning, the subtle shifts began. Kenji noticed them, not through overt surveillance, but through the heightened awareness of a man who lived by observation. A drone, usually on a precise delivery route, lingered for a few seconds too long near his rooftop stall. A new face, a man in an unconvincing delivery uniform, ordered ramen but barely touched it, his eyes constantly scanning the perimeter. The hum of the city, which had always been a comforting background, now seemed to contain an undercurrent of tension, a barely perceptible change in frequency. He felt watched, a crawling sensation on his skin. His usually peaceful rooftop felt exposed, vulnerable. The corporate towers that had always been just part of the skyline now seemed to loom over him, their windows like silent, unblinking eyes. He knew he couldn't hold on to the shard. It was too hot, too dangerous. He needed to offload it, to get it into the right hands, or at least, hands that could handle it better than his own. He thought of his ramen. The simplicity of it. The honesty. This data, this corruption, felt like the antithesis of everything he served. He had to act. Kenji had one contact, a lifeline for desperate times, buried deep in the city's underground. His name was Takumi, and he operated within the shadow net, an elusive network of data couriers, tech rebels, and disillusioned corporate exiles. They were the digital ghosts of Neo-Tokyo, whispering truths into the city's darkest corners, fighting the pervasive influence of Omnicorp with bytes and encrypted algorithms. Takumi was an old acquaintance, a former regular at Kenji's ramen stall before he disappeared into the deeper currents of the net. He was pragmatic, cynical, but with a surprising core of ethics that still valued genuine information over corporate lies. The meeting point was an abandoned section of the Shinagawa Undercity, a sprawling, forgotten labyrinth of derelict service tunnels and crumbling infrastructure beneath the gleaming towers. The air here was thick with the scent of stagnant water, rust, and the faint, acrid smell of burnt wiring. The only light came from Kenji's handheld lullabies and the occasional flicker of Takumi's data slate. Kenji navigated the oppressive darkness, his augmented vision piercing the gloom, his footsteps echoing in the damp silence. The quiet was unsettling after the constant hum of the city above. He found Takumi in a makeshift safe house, a small, heavily fortified alcove carved out of the tunnel wall. Takumi was hunched over a glowing data slate, its light reflecting off his tired, intelligent eyes. He was dressed in dark, nondescript clothing, his face perpetually shadowed beneath a hooded jacket. A faint scent of synthetic coffee lingered around him. Kenji, Takumi's voice was a low, almost surprised murmur. It's been a while. You look stressed. I am, Kenji admitted, sliding the data shard across the rough, metal table between them. I think your network might be interested in this. It came with my tonkatsu. Takumi picked up the shard, his fingers agile. He plugged it into a heavily armored terminal, isolated from all networks, its screen flickering to life with the familiar cascade of corrupted data. As he sifted through the fragmented audio, video, and biometric strings, his expression grew increasingly grim. Dr. Arisawa, Takumi breathed, a note of gravity in his voice. We've been looking for him. Omnicorp erased every trace. He was working on Project Chimera, their latest neural interface initiative. Rumor was, he found something, a backdoor. A way to bypass Omnicorp's mind-shaping algorithms. Or, worse, a way for Omnicorp to achieve absolute, irreversible control over the city's population. Kenji listened, his stomach tightening. This was far bigger than he'd imagined. This, Takumi said, tapping the screen, this is proof. This is everything we needed. It shows Omnicorp was not just developing the tech, but actively deploying it. They're suppressing dissenting thoughts, manipulating public opinion, even rewriting personal memories. And Arisawa was trying to stop them. And the informant? Kenji asked. The one who gave me the shard. Takumi shook his head. Don't know. Could be anyone within Omnicorp's inner circle, a ghost, a disillusioned technician. They took a huge risk trusting it to a street vendor. He looked at Kenji, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. Perhaps they knew the pure heart of a ramen master was the safest place. So, what's the plan? Kenji asked, a sense of weary inevitability settling over him. He was in too deep to turn back now. Takumi leaned forward, his eyes glinting in the dim light. The Shadow Net's mission is to expose Omnicorp. To rip their facade apart. This data, properly disseminated, could trigger a citywide awakening. But Omnicorp's firewalls are ironclad. We need a direct line, a pulse into the city's public networks that they can't stop. And that means physical access to a high-density comms array. Where? Kenji asked, already dreading the answer. The Kyoto Tower Antenna Array, Takumi stated, gesturing upwards, as if he could point through miles of concrete. It's the heart of Omnicorp's public broadcast system. Virtually impenetrable. He paused, his gaze sweeping over Kenji. But you, Kenji, with your knowledge of the city's hidden rooftop pathways, your ability to blend in, to disappear in plain sight, you are uniquely positioned. You know the secret passages, the forgotten maintenance shafts. You know the angles. Kenji felt a chill. His peaceful rooftop had become a liability, his simple life a complicated entanglement. His unique understanding of Neo-Tokyo's vertical geography, honed by years of navigating it for his ramen business, was now his curse. He wasn't a fighter, or a spy. He was just Kenji, the ramen master. Why me? Kenji finally asked, his voice strained. I'm a cook, not a courier. Because you're outside their system, Takumi replied, his voice soft. You have no digital footprint, no corporate affiliations. You're invisible to their surveillance. And you have a moral compass, Kenji. That's a rare commodity these days. Kenji looked at the glowing shard, its contents humming silently with the weight of untold truths. He thought of Dr. Arisawa, a man whose desperate act of defiance had found its way to his humble ramen stall. He thought of the citizens above, living in a manipulated reality. The taste of his authentic ramen, a small rebellion against the city's synthetic existence, suddenly felt deeply symbolic. I'm in, Kenji said, his voice firm, no longer just a whisper. Tell me the route. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. The Kyoto Tower Antenna Array was Omnicorp's fortress in the sky, a glittering spire piercing the clouds, heavily guarded by automated drones and elite enforcers. Kenji would have to navigate the dizzying heights of Neo-Tokyo's rooftops, utilizing forgotten maintenance tunnels and precarious exterior pathways, relying on his intimate knowledge of the city's unseen vertical arteries. His mission: to get Takumi's specially designed broadcast injector to the antenna array, plug it in, and unleash the truth bomb. The day of the operation dawned gray and wet, as usual, the drizzle turning the city's chrome surfaces into slick, reflective mirrors. The air thrummed with a heightened tension. Omnicorp's internal security network was already buzzing, having detected subtle probing attempts by the Shadow Net. They were on edge, waiting. Kenji moved with a grim determination. He wore his usual dark, utilitarian jumpsuit, but beneath it, Takumi had fitted him with a lightweight, augmented harness, its synth fiber weaving providing enhanced grip and subtle kinetic dampening for his jumps. His bionic right leg, a common augmentation for city dwellers, was now tuned for maximum agility and silent movement. His ramen cart, his steadfast companion, sat folded on his rooftop, waiting. He began his ascent, not from the ground, but from a lower-level maintenance platform he knew only maintenance drones frequented. He scaled service ladders, squeezed through ventilation shafts, and traversed narrow, wind-swept ledges. The city, usually a distant hum, now felt intimately close, its cold, hard surfaces pressing in on him. The metallic tang of rain was sharp on his tongue. As he moved higher, the humming of the city grew louder, more aggressive. Omnicorp drones, typically following predictable patrol patterns, were now deviating, their optical sensors sweeping erratically. Kenji saw the distinct, angular silhouettes of Kageryu, Shadow Dragon, drones, Omnicorp's elite hunter-killers, far more advanced than anything he'd ever encountered. Their silent, predatory glide sent a shiver down his spine. Suddenly, a red alarm flared across his internal comms, a frantic warning from Takumi. "Kenji! They're on to us. Commander Kageyama's unit is deploying. You've been compromised. Commander Kageyama." The whispered name sent a fresh wave of dread through Kenji. Kageyama was Omnicorp's chief enforcer, a legendary figure known for his ruthless efficiency and augmented combat prowess. He was a ghost in the shadows, a living weapon. Kenji pushed harder, scrambling across a narrow, glass-paneled walkway connecting two corporate towers. Below him, the city lights blurred into an abstract tapestry. The wind howled around him, threatening to rip him from his precarious perch. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat. He wasn't just risking his ramen business anymore, he was risking his life. He reached the next building, plunging into a maintenance access tunnel. The air here was thick with dust and the acrid smell of ozone from faulty wiring. He could hear it now, the heavy thud of approaching boots, the low growl of Kageyama's augmented voice. "Seal all exits. He's trapped." Kenji moved deeper into the tunnel, his augmented leg propelling him with surprising speed. He wasn't a fighter, but he was a master of his environment. He knew every loose panel, every hidden crawlspace, every shortcut in this forgotten maze. He was a noodle in a bowl of steel, and he was surprisingly slippery. He emerged onto another rooftop, this one vast and open, a flat expanse of dark synth concrete designed for drone landings. The antenna array, a forest of shimmering metal spires, loomed in the distance. He was close. But a sudden, high-pitched whir announced the arrival of the Kageryu drones. Two of them descended, their glowing red optics locking onto him. Kenji scrambled for cover, diving behind a massive ventilation unit. Laser fire erupted, scoring deep gouges in the ferrocrete where he had been standing. The heat of the blast singed his hair. He was cornered. Omnicorp enforcers, their heavy synth suits clanking, were already securing the access points to the rooftop. Kageyama himself, a towering figure whose every movement bespoke raw power, stepped onto the roof, his augmented arm crackling with suppressed energy. His eyes, devoid of emotion, locked onto Kenji. The ramen vendor, Kageyama's voice was deep, resonant, amplified by his helmet. An unlikely revolutionary. Hand over the device. Kenji clutched the broadcast injector, its small, smooth surface a stark contrast to the rough texture of the concrete beneath his trembling fingers. He looked at Kageyama, then at the vast, impersonal city below. He thought of Dr. Arisawa, his desperate plea echoing in the data logs. He thought of his ramen, a small, honest comfort in a world of artifice. He couldn't give it up. He glanced around, desperate. His eyes fell upon his ramen cart, folded and tucked away near the edge of the rooftop. It stood there, a silent sentinel, a symbol of his simple life. An idea, reckless and desperate, sparked in his mind. "I don't have it," Kenji yelled, throwing a small, empty data chip towards Kageyama as a diversion. As Kageyama's arm moved to swat it away, Kenji sprinted towards his ramen cart. "Stop him!" Kageyama roared, laser fire erupting from the drones. Kenji reached the cart, his fingers flying across its control panel. With a series of rapid commands, he activated its internal fusion cell to overload. The entire cart began to hum, a dangerously high-pitched whine. He then hit the deploy sequence, sending the cart unfolding rapidly towards the approaching enforcers, its metal components clanking and scraping. "Take cover!" Kageyama bellowed, realizing Kenji's intent. The ramen cart, propelled by its emergency thrusters and unstable fusion cell, shot across the rooftop like a gleaming silver projectile. It slammed into the charging enforcers, sending them sprawling, creating a momentary chaotic barrier. The broth unit, ruptured by the impact, spewed scalding, savory liquid across the ground, sending plumes of fragrant steam into the cold air. Noodles and chashu scattered like confetti. Then, with a blinding flash and a concussive blast, the cart's fusion cell exploded. The sound was deafening, echoing across the rooftops. Metal shrapnel rained down. The force of the explosion sent Kenji flying, slamming him hard against the antenna array's central spire. Pain shot through him, a searing agony in his augmented leg and shoulder. But he had bought himself precious seconds. The explosion had momentarily disabled the drones and disoriented Kageyama and his enforcers. The ramen cart, his beloved livelihood, was gone, reduced to a twisted, smoking wreck. A profound sense of loss washed over him, even amidst the adrenaline. He struggled to his feet, gritting his teeth against the pain, the broadcast injector clutched tightly in his uninjured hand. The antenna array. It was right there. He scrambled towards the main comms port, a glowing aperture on the side of the towering spire. With trembling fingers, he jammed the broadcast injector into the port, its tiny lights flashing furiously. A wave of static, then a surge of power, reverberated through the spire. On every public screen, every personal compad, every corporate monitor in Neo-Tokyo, the ubiquitous Omnicorp logo suddenly fractured. In its place, the raw, unfiltered data from Dr. Arisawa's shard began to broadcast, grainy video footage of forced neural linking, corrupted audio logs of suppressed dissent, encrypted documents detailing Omnicorp's pervasive mind-shaping algorithms. The city's carefully constructed reality began to visibly, audibly, shatter. A collective gasp swept through Neo-Tokyo. The digital hum of the city changed, shifting from Omnicorp's controlled frequency to a chaotic cacophony of raw, unfiltered information. Panic erupted. Traffic lights flickered wildly. Automated shops stalled. The streets filled with stunned faces, their eyes wide with disbelief as they witnessed the truth unfold. Kageyama, shaking off the effects of the blast, looked up, his silver eyes blazing with fury. He saw the data streaming, the logo shattering, Kenji standing defiant beside the array. "You fool!" Kageyama roared, his voice filled with a chilling, raw hatred. "You've doomed us all. You've doomed this city." Kenji, his body screaming in pain, looked out at the convulsing city. He had unleashed chaos, yes. But he had also unleashed the truth. The city was no longer blind. He knew he couldn't stay. Kageyama would kill him. He stumbled towards the edge of the rooftop, eyeing the dizzying drop. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper from his community. Takumi. Kenji. Below you. Emergency ascent drone. Now. A small, sleek drone, barely visible against the towering chrome of the adjacent building, materialized. It extended a grappling line. Kenji, with one last defiant look at Kageyama, lunged, grabbing the line. The drone ascended rapidly, pulling him away from the enraged enforcer, away from the shattered piece of his rooftop, away from the remains of his ramen stall. He was injured, his body throbbing with pain, his old life as a ramen vendor utterly destroyed. He was now a target, a pariah, a ghost hunted by the most powerful corporation in Neo-Tokyo. But as he looked down at the city, still reeling from the shockwave of truth, he felt a strange sense of exhilaration. The drone carried him through the perpetual drizzle, towards an uncertain future. Omnicorp's reputation was shattered, but not destroyed. The city was shaken, awake, but confused. The truth had been revealed, but it had to be understood, processed, acted upon. Kenji was no longer the jaded street vendor. He was now an integral part of the shadow net, a quiet hero who had traded noodles for truth. His ramen stall was gone, but the aroma of revolution now clung to him, a new, potent scent. He would find a new purpose, a new path, perhaps even a new way to bring comfort to the awakened city. The hum of Neo-Tokyo would never sound the same to him again. And neither would the quiet resolve within his own heart,